Coalition of Block Associations and Community Organizations. If you are interested in starting a block association or a neighborhood association, if you want to learn about what block associations do, if you just want to know more about what's happening on the Upper West Side, including activities at many of the nonprofit organizations serving our community, I urge you to sign up for our newsletter. Our coalition includes block, neighborhood associations, and joined with many of the leading nonprofits that are working in our community in various ways. Tonight, though, it's a really sexy topic. Well, maybe not. Composting and garbage containerization. It's quite a mouthful, but it's happening. And it's happening on the Upper West Side, and we know it. And we've got a lot of questions submitted already by residents and our neighbors. And we're going to stick to those topics because our guests are here with a presentation and expertise on those topics. Although I know there's lots of issues that are sanitation related that we care about, and we've covered that previously. But tonight it is really focusing on composting, which is happening for sure, and the process by which garbage containerization is also going to become a bigger factor. So they say that the people who work in the sanitation department are New York's strongest. So we have a couple of strong men joining us today. Jonathan Vigers is the Assistant Commissioner at the New York City Department of Sanitation. Jonathan, raise your hand up there so they say who you are. There's Jonathan. And Andrew Hoyles is the Senior Manager for Outreach and Education with Sanitation. And I'm Steve Anderson, and I have the responsibility of serving as the president of the coalition and the Block Association where I live on West 81st Street, and the Theodore Roosevelt Park Neighborhood Association. Some of our members and some of our board members are in the Zoom room. We'll get to that in a little while. We're going to begin with a presentation about composting and then take some questions about that topic. And I think Andrew is going to kick us off with a presentation about composting. Andrew, take it away, please.
Great. Thanks so much, Steve. Really great to have us here tonight. Oh, let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's good.
Excellent. Well, yeah, I want to say thanks just because this is a great opportunity for us to talk about curbside composting. You're right in that it's an important topic. I won't use the same wording that you used because I'm working right now, but it's an exciting topic. It's something that's impacting all New Yorkers, and my job really is to help make sure that folks really understand how to participate. And I always start my presentation just that if there's a question that we didn't get to, or if you had to think a little bit after the presentation, you can always email us outreach@dsny.nyc.gov, and we'll follow up with you. That way you get your questions answered and you're able to participate and you know about the rules of the program.
And Andrew, if I could just say that anyone who asks a question from our YouTube viewers that's in the chat that we don't get to, we're going to share that with you to be able to respond to those people. So thanks so much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That works. That works. So yeah, service for curbside composting is citywide. It's in the Bronx, it's in Staten Island, it's in Manhattan. We just launched service last week, the week of October 6th. And service has existed in Brooklyn and Queens. So right now we have a citywide program. Okay. That's a full stop. I just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware of that. Sometimes people think, well, I don't know if I have it, or don't I have to sign up, or is there some type of thing I have to fill out online to make sure I have service? Everyone has service in the 5 boroughs of New York City. It is now a citywide service, and I want folks to be aware of that. They have the service to participate. This includes all residential buildings, so single-family homes, small apartment buildings, multi-unit residential buildings. If you live in a high rise, it could have 50 units, could have 100 units, could have 1,000 units. They all have service, right? And this is collections on the same day as recycling every week. So The way this works is no one signed up for trash collection or recycling collection. You just had service on that specific day of the week, and it's the same for curbside composting. You just have the service. Our trucks are looking for compost bins, either the brown bin or maybe your own receptacle, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. But it's the same day as recycling. Every week we'll collect your leaf and yard waste and your food scraps and food soil paper. One big, very important note is that separation of compost from the trash is mandatory citywide. So this is a program like recycling. It is mandatory to participate. And we at the department will ensure that folks are aware how to participate through education and outreach, but also what mandatory means is that we can issue summons for um, issues of separation. So I'll dig into that a little bit more in these next two slides. Basically, leaf and yard waste, as far as the we call them the commodities, the material. Um, they're mandatory. There's a 3-month warning period before residents are subject to fines. So in Manhattan, the Bronx, and Staten Island, we're looking at this as the leaf and yard waste mandatory component. They have to separate it from your trash, um, and there is a warning period. But once that warning period ends, you can be summoned for these items being there. For food waste and food soil paper, while it is mandatory, we are in a warning period through the rest of this year into this early spring. Starting April 1st, that warning period ends. Basically, this allows for 6 months of citywide service for buildings and residents around the city to learn how to participate and to get a head start, learn any adjustments that they need to make for their building or for their internal home in their kitchen, so that they don't throw out that compostable material. We want to keep this out of the trash. We want to get it in the bin, but we also want to give you a little bit of time to learn how to participate. But I've been working on this for some time. It's not that hard. It is something. There's a little bit of a learning curve, but once you figure it out, you'll be surprised at how much you save from like how much you reduce from throwing outside and putting out for trash, and how much you have for composting and recycling. Um, the other point about this that we really want to make sure that's aware is we're not just going to roll out a citywide program and then just start issuing summons right away. We really want to make sure that folks are aware that there's opportunities to learn and to participate as a family in your home and as a building, of neighbors. It's a practice that's going to take a little bit of time, and we're aware of that. So why are we doing this? It's a big question we get. There could be even questions right now in the either in the chat or on the YouTube about why are we making people separate out their banana peels and their leaves. It's important for two reasons. The one big one is we're trying to containerize the waste, basically keeping food waste specifically, or rat food, the putrescible waste, the sticky stuff, the gross stuff, the stuff that pests like to get into. We're keeping that away from them. We're doing so by putting the material that they like to eat in hard-sided bins and collecting it on a dedicated day. And that helps keep our streets clean, right? And this is a big, big goal of this administration. And we're working to make sure that there's not trash and litter from torn black bags on the curb. The other big reason is just the climate impacts of composting and of sending food waste and food soil paper to landfills. We want to make sure that we have a positive impact on the climate. We're creating compost and clean energy from this material instead of sending it to landfill. One of the big questions we get is, what can I compost? And I do think anything from your yard, anything from your kitchen should be glued into your head, in the back of your head. Try not to overthink this. We'll take it. We can process it. Department of Sanitation uses industrial municipal scale composting or digestion of the material that's collected. So you don't really have to worry about it. Just give it to us on the dedicated day in the receptacle that it should be set out in, and we'll handle the rest from there. But for the specifics, there's kind of three categories: leaf and yard waste. So that's anything from your yard, plants, leaves, twigs, and grass. Um, Anything from your kitchen, right? No matter if it's cooked or uncooked, raw, spoiled. Um, if you got takeout and it's in the back of the fridge and you find it a week later and you don't know what to do with it, that would be compostable. But even if it was groceries that you just got and nobody's getting around to eat it, and then you're just feeling like, okay, well, that's going to go bad in a few days. How do I get rid of this? That's also fine and compostable. Meat and dairy and things with bones are all okay. And while that might be a surprise to some people, this again is municipal composting, municipal digestion. We can accept that material. Food soil paper often confuses people as well, but you should just think of this as stuff that you use to hold on to food. So in the picture, you see like a napkin that has a coffee stain on it or a tea bag. That's food soil paper. It's paper that has some type of food residue or residual on it. Paper plates, maybe from a kid's birthday party, right? That you had all the cake on and there's the frosting bits on there. That's all compostable. Even the pizza box with cheese and grease inside of there, that's compostable as well in our program. What we don't want is the recyclables, like metal, glass, plastic, and cartons, or clean paper and cardboard. There are dedicated streams for those, so you should continue to recycle those items correctly. Or what we also don't want is trash, right? Like foam or diapers or medical waste or pet waste, human waste, hygiene products, and that's all just to keep our sanitation workers safe and keeping away from those type of items, right? One thing not depicted on the slide that showing on the screen is compostable products, and those are all fine as well. So the compostable products might be things like, a compostable baggie that you got at a specialty food store, where they advertise themselves as the bags will break down in a compost pile. Things like that are fine. Or other compostable products sometimes come around that you might get at a fair or an event, and they're framed or advertised as they'll break down in a compost pile. We're fine with that. We'll take it. What's really important is just not to really want people to participate in it in the program. Where's the material going? Well, actually, some of the material compost that's collected goes to our Staten Island compost facility. That's a location within Fresh Kills that is dedicated for composting. I believe it's a 27-acre site, and we create the fertilizer there, the natural material that we actually end up giving back out to schools, gardens, community groups to have a finished compost to apply to their street trees, to apply to their gardens, things like that. We also send some material to the Newtown Creek waste water treatment facility, where they create renewable energy and throughout the process of anaerobic digestion. Anaerobic digestion basically is the conversion of compostable materials into biogas, which is a renewable energy. Um, and that way, the material, nothing has to go to landfill, right? So there's two really beneficial processes that are happening to get this material from the landfill to make sure that where we have a product that New Yorkers actually need and want. One other important thing just to note, and I've been saying this for a while with regards to the smart bins. It's just important to note when service hadn't yet started, curbside compost service. I was saying use a smart bin. Learn how to start composting in your kitchen by using a smart bin. Collect your food scraps, save them out through the week, and then before you have service, take your food waste down to a smart bin and compost it that way. Well, service has now started, curbside composting service has started. So maybe this doesn't really apply to you anymore. You can still use them. Um, and maybe you haven't gotten your bin yet. Maybe you're still maybe you still need to order your bin, but you can still use the smart bins. There are 400 bins across all 5 boroughs, and they're open 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Um, you do have to download the app onto your smartphone, either for an Android or iOS phone, at nyc.gov/smart bin composting. These bins aren't going anywhere. We have no plans of taking them out. And so that's to be beneficial if you're maybe kind of, one day of the week for your composting isn't enough, you can still use the smart bins. Or if you're out for lunch, for instance, maybe having a picnic at the park and you have some food waste left over, and you walk by, you can deposit it inside one of the smart composting bins. So how to compost is important just to kind of get into the new habit or the muscle or the new behavior of composting. And it's really similar to how you're participating with recycling. but there is some differences. Basically, I think the key thing is you have to um, have in your home a separate receptacle than the trash to store your food waste during the week. This could be a little kitchen container that you can order online. It can be a Tupperware or even just any type of plastic bag that you put your food waste in. So kind of imagine what you're doing with your recycling. Whenever you have an empty soda can, you're putting that, in a separate receptacle, not in the trash. Same thing with food waste. This material you're saving during the week or during, the course of a number of days, and then you're placing it inside of your bin. This is the bin that goes at the curb, and you have two options essentially. You can use any bin that's 55 gallons or less, as long as it has a secure lid. You can label that bin with a DSNY official composting bin decal. We give those out at our outreach events. You can order them online for free. We'll mail it to you. You can also order, while supplies last, one of the DSNY brown bins. And you can do all this at nyc.gov/curbside composting. Um, and that would be your receptacle that you set out at the curb each week for sanitation to collect and compost the material. That's it. It's the same as recycling in that regard, if you can think about it that way, right? You're separating out your food waste from the trash, similar how you would separate out a soda can or your finished newspaper from the trash, putting it in its own receptacle, and then depositing that material into the actual bin that's set out at the curb. The requirement here is that that bin has to be 55 gallons or less with a secure lid. And people ask, what does secure mean? You want a lid that's affixed to the bin. It doesn't have to be welded on, but does have to be a hard-sided lid that is stuck on there and rodents and pests can't come inside of there. Wind won't blow the lid off, something like that. We strongly recommend that you line the bin with a clear plastic bag or a paper bag or even a biodegradable or compostable bag, however it's advertised, to keep the bin itself clean. That'll reduce any odors. That'll help with servicing of the material or sanitation picking up the material. What we don't want to see is black trash bags lining the bins. And one other recommendation is just to tie the bag closed before putting the bin at the curb for collection. That's also just another best management practice. That's for food scraps and food soil paper. Leaf and yard waste is slightly different, and that's just because leaf and yard waste is material that you can set out in either a paper lawn and leaf bag or a clear plastic bag. So because because it's not food present, we allow this sort of alternate set out. But to note, you can still place leaf and yard waste in a bin that's 55 gallons or less, or within a DSNY brown bin, as long as it has a secure lid. But if you have a lot of, leaf and yard waste, fall leaves are coming down right now, then that's the one allowance that doesn't have to be in a bin. It can be in a paper lawn leaf bag or a clear plastic bag. So we ask that for twigs and branches no bigger than 2 feet by 4 feet, you can bundle them up and with twine and place them next to the bin or the bags. Right. So just as far as how to compost it, this is not requiring you to turn a compost pile or to add composting worms or anything like that to it. This is really separating out the material that would be going to trash into its own receptacle, making sure the lid's on and setting it at the curb the night before collection of the recycling day. Fairly simple. But there are some misconceptions that come with it, and I'd just like to clarify. And people often say, well, it's going to attract rats and pests and critters, and this is going to be much worse regarding these creatures than just throwing the material away in the bags. And the reality is it doesn't. What we're trying to do is reduce rodent activity by locking the food waste up in a bin that the rodents and the pests can't get into. Right, that's the big surprise that we're trying to do. It's if you think about it a little bit, it's not so surprising. If the rodents can't get to the food, then they're not going to try to visit that location. There's another misconception about composting being very complicated, and it really isn't. I think that if you start to think and you're getting a headache thinking about it, then you're thinking too much. And I mean that I'm trying to be humble as I say that, because I have been working on this for a long time. But this program is very user friendly, In fact, it is very similar to recycling in the sense that you just need your dedicated receptacle in your home to separate out the food waste and to keep it from going into the trash, and then putting it in your specific bin for leaf and yard waste, food scraps, and food soil paper. I did mention that you can compost meat, bones, dairy, or cooked food. All of that is totally okay in our program because the material is either going to an industrial scale compost facility on Staten Island or to one of the anaerobic digesters in the system here in New York. I also said that you can use plastic bags. So I'm just reiterating because a lot of people had questions and confusions about this, and especially for folks on the Upper West Side, right? Like services existed there on and off for some time, right? So the misconceptions I understand, but for this program that exists today and for the future, you certainly can use plastic bags in your brown bin, and it really helps folks participate. Our facilities actually have machineries, depackaging machinery is what it's called. It shreds up the plastics and separates them to one side, and then the food waste and the compostable material gets sorted on the other side. Kind of creates like an oatmeal looking slurry, which we can compost or digest at that point. And then there's another concern that people say the compost is just getting thrown out, and it's really not. Our we do use a lot of split body trucks or trucks that are divided in the rear to have one side accept one material type, such as trash, and then the other side accept the other material type, such as compost. Or one side accepts paper and cardboard, and the other side accepts metal, glass, plastic, and cartons on the recycling day. Just one little tip here for um, storing food waste inside your home. The photo is showing a little kitchen caddy, but you can order these online. You can get one, at a home goods store. You don't have to purchase anything to participate. Don't let this be the barrier or the burden to get you to start participating. You can just line any type of tup. In my home, we use just like a Tupperware that's stowed in the refrigerator. Some people I know they store it on the counter, um, and that's where they put their food waste instead of putting it in the trash. And you can line this with any type of, bag as well, similar to what you would do with your brown bin, just so that you can easily deposit into the composting receptacle that goes at the curb. Some people store their scraps in the freezer to prevent odors, and you can clean these containers as frequently as you would need to, right? For the bin itself, as far as taking care of the bin, right? This is your bin. This bin belongs to that address, right? You can write your address on the bin. You can clean the bin as needed. You can store the bin either in the the front of the building, the back of the building, or depending on how your building looks internally, inside. And I think a lot of times building staff and building supers store the composting bin in the same location as where recycling is brought to in the building, right? So that way it's one stop shop, so to speak, for individuals taking their food waste and also their recyclables. They can sort it all out. And then the building staff themselves can take the material right out to the curb when it's ready to, right? But this bin belongs to the building and should be kind of thought of that in that regard. Um, Again, if you just to want to note again that if you haven't ordered your brown bin yet, you know, please do so while supplies last. You can go to nyc.gov/curbside composting. We are delivering for free a starter bin. If you need to purchase additional bins, again, you can use your own bin as long as it has a secure lid and it's 55 gallons or less. You can also go to bins.nyc, www.bins.nyc, and purchase one of the DSNY brown bins for use in this program. Okay. We like to throw this slide in just as a reminder. The set out rules changed a year ago, and we want to make sure folks still know that after 6 p.m., you can set out your bins, your containers of 55 gallons or less with a secure lid at the curb for the night before collection. Or if you're setting out bags, you can place those bags directly on the curb after 8 p.m. So the one note here, I think it's important, non-recyclable bulk items, that's things, or non-recyclable large items, really what that should say large items are things like a bed frame or a desk or a tub. Those things can't be recycled and they're too large really for collection on on the day when we're using our split body trucks. So that's why we recommend and insist those bulky, large items get set out on the non-recyclable trash only collection day, right? But this is kind of old information, right? Like the set out laws changed a while ago at this point, and we're making sure that folks are aware, again, that this is true for curbside composting as well. One thing for any building management, building staff, property owners who are on this meeting right now should know we do offer some support to them directly, because we do know that there could be training staff involved. There could be, a barrier between the this building staff and the tenants in the building. We do think it's important for those individuals to be notified and be informed about how this program works, because the residents are the ones running to that building staff asking, where's the compost bin going to go, and what can and can't go in it, and how does this program supposed to work. So I'm saying all that because the department, we do offer informational webinars specifically tailored to building management, building staff, property owners, building supers. We hold those on Thursdays. They're for free. They're really helpful. I think that a lot of the folks who attend them, they do feel equipped with the information for how to tell their tenants and how to tell the dwellers of the buildings they manage how to participate. We do provide some best management practices for those large buildings for how to set up their bins, and how to educate and tell the tenants in the building. And we also offer free educational materials that are translated in multiple languages, just to that reflect the diversity of the city itself. Okay. Again, those materials are available on nyc.gov/curbside composting. You'll see the whole list of our info sessions there. And then these free resources, right? nyc.gov/sanitation materials, or the event request page is listed there too. And these are for any individual who might want tip sheets, building signage, and or bin decals. And it's really like the teams here that work on all these, they're really smart. They're thinking about, like, what does a New Yorker have time for? Very little time, right? With everything going on in our lives, but also what do they want to see? We're also very visual here. So literally, like, take a look at these tip sheets, read them, look at them. What's on those is generally the best guidelines, right? You don't have to really think about it much more than that. Oop. I just have a few more slides before really just open it up for questions, but I wanted to touch on just a few things regarding how we've been educating the public and how we've been talking to folks as service has been rolling out. Service has only started in Manhattan, um, in the Bronx and Staten Island for 2 weeks now at this point. But part of our direct outreach to get folks informed of the service is that we've been canvassing all buildings that have 1 to 9 units. Those are what we consider like sort of low-rise properties. Um, in the Upper West Side, that was we reached about 14% were contacted of all those 1 to 9 units on the Upper West Side. Most of that canvassing took place the first week of October. Those are just some of the numbers that I pulled from the data folks here. And also, we've done a lot of targeted calls with large property management companies and tenant organizations. Hey, we're here tonight. Um, just really talking to the folks that are part of the know as far as building management, tenant organizations, or block associations. Those are groups that are really the individuals that know how things actually roll out on day one. And uh, part of our work has been to really work with them from the building management, property management role, and let them know this was coming down the pike and this is how service is going to work. We've also, as I stated earlier, held many info sessions. We hold them every Thursday, and then as needed for resident staff, um, organizations as well. There was a public mailer, or citywide mailer, excuse me, that went out to all residents. And that's why you have these folks who are going to their buildings management and saying, "Hey, I've learned about service. Tell me now how how to participate. Where's the bin gonna go?" This is still happening as well. This is ongoing. And then in home, this is the mailer copy that went out earlier this year towards the end of the summer, um, where we direct folks to the information of how to order your bin decal, how to order your composting bin, um, and just how service will work generally. Lastly, we've done lots of paid advertising, just combination of social, community, and ethnic web publications, streaming radio, and print as applicable. So that was a lot of information. I know we don't have so much time, but I want to thank everybody, and I can have some questions, I believe, and then there will be another portion of this presentation tonight. But if your question doesn't get answered because we don't have enough time, please email us outreach@dsny.nyc.gov, and then myself or somebody else on the team will get back to you as soon as they can later that week.
Thanks, Andrew. Very good, very comprehensive. I'm gonna try to, in the interest of time, convey questions that are coming from YouTube, some of our members, some that have been put in the Zoom room. Just to quickly come around, I just want to quickly in the Zoom room here, Liz DeVito from the 75th Street Block Association asks, what about pet food? That's one thing. And Gail Dubov, who leads the West 83rd Street, a longtime block association, one of the founders of our group, asked if the paper plate with some food residue on it is not compostable. It still gets put in compost. It doesn't. The plate doesn't have to be compostable. If it's a plate, it still goes in, right? So if you can answer those two questions.
Yeah. So am I still okay? Yeah. So both would be fine to be put into compost. Like the paper plate with food residue, that's fine. Pet food's not something we're broadcasting citywide, but that would be fine in our compost system as well.
Okay, good. So Katina Ellison, founder and a co-leader on West 71st Street Block Association, sent in a question. And she said, people are sometimes using the containers as trash cans. Okay. They're putting trash in there. And people really believe that there's the possibility that this whole composting is going to attract more rats. They don't really believe that this is an effective way. So you need to share with us a little bit about why that really is a good strategy, because it doesn't sound like that to a lot of people.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I mean, Jonathan will touch on containerization in his presentation, but containerization is the trick. These are rodent resistant, hard sided bins that have a latching lid. And compare that against a black trash bag that's sitting on the curb for many hours of the night. The rodent that has sharp teeth and sharp claws can tear through easily a plastic film bag and get out the material that's in that bag, versus a hard-sided bin that has a latching lid where they can't tear through. So it isn't so complicated, but I certainly understand that people's belief around it is what the challenge is there, right?
Okay,
Uh,
so
sorry,
Elon,
sorry, Stephen. I just also want to add that this isn't. It's also not new material. This is material that would be going out in your trash anyway. It's not like we're creating anything new. We're just now out putting it in a different place and making sure that it gets properly disposed of.
got it. So Elon Rabinovich is an Upper West Side landlord, and he wants to know about, you touched on this, the education program. The education program, uh, how is that going to educate his tenants about proper composting? And he's concerned that non-compliance is going to result with fines to him because he's the landlord. So how's that all going to work?
Yeah. So as I was stating, for what we do for education, we have been educating folks with canvassing. We've hit all of the 1 to 9 unit households on the Upper West Side. We hold info sessions. We've provided a mailer. We do outreach events, targeted outreach events to certain neighborhoods upon request as possible. So the education and outreach is going to be happening, right? So we're not giving up on that. But we also, specifically to his point of being a building manager, we also offer a training and info session for his colleagues, for himself and his colleagues. I would highly recommend he takes one of those, learns what the best management practices are, and ask himself, really, what am I doing right now for recycling? Because it's going to be very similar, right? If you're getting issues with tenants not recycling correctly, how are you working with them? Are you educating them? Is there signage up? Has anybody been informed about what can and can't be recycled in the building? It's really going to be the same.
Okay, Larry Wood is from Goddard Riverside, one of the nonprofits that's part of our coalition. And he's wondering the size of these containers. How are they going to be picked up? How are they going to be fit between cars and this room? Is the machine going to lift these containers, and some of them can be 55 gallons, up above cars to get them off of the street and put the material into the truck. How's that going to work?
Thanks for starting this meeting by saying that we are New York's strongest, Steve, because New York Strongest doesn't have a problem with servicing these bins. They can pull the bags from the bins if they need to, but also the vehicles, the sanitation collection trucks are being retrofitted with lift assists for bins that are, if they are very heavy, then they can use a lift assist. But each sanitation truck has two individual sanitation workers who can support each other in lifting heavy material to the truck. Lifting heavy stuff hasn't been an issue for sanitation in the number of years that the agency's existed. If they have to move the bins down the street, they do have wheels on the bins to do so. Just if there are cars that are pressed up too close to each other to find a space to get the bin to the truck.
So when the fines start for composting, who gets fined? And how do you find out if people are violating? You're going to go through the regular garbage to see if there's composting in there. How will you know if there's compostable materials in the regular garbage? Are there going to be inspectors? I remember a great journalist, A.J. Weberman, studied Bob Dylan's garbage and wrote a whole book about it. Garbology was invented. Are you going to be studying our garbage to see what we've got in there?
So that's funny. I'm gonna look into that book. I haven't seen it. Sanitation doesn't go through like looking in the way that I think people are worried about. I think people are worried about sanitation like peeping in their trash when they're setting it out and saying, "Hey, what's happened?" Enforcement happens through a number of different ways. Could be enforcement of when the bins are set out, if I set out at the wrong time or the right time, are the correct receptacles used, and I think specifically what the question's being asked is about. Um, is food waste, food soil paper, or yard waste being commingled or mixed with trash or recyclables? And that's really how a summons could be issued, right? Because we don't want to see that. There are now separate streams for all these materials, and that's effectively how a summons would be written, right? It would go to the property owner. That's who the ticket's written out to. And it's similar to how recycling happens. A sanitation worker can inform their supervisor. A supervisor can observe bad behavior of a building week after week after week, and they can show up. And then they are then encouraged to, as their role of their job, to like investigate. And if their investigation finds that there's issues here, then they can issue a summons. But it's not like on day one in the Upper West Side we were driving down the street tearing open through bags, looking to give summons to folks.
In effect, Elon, our own building owner of a small building, he's the one getting the ticket.
He'd get the ticket, yeah.
He gets the ticket, but he doesn't have a way of saying, well, wait a second, it's 3G and 5H that are the ones who are putting,
That's right.
So it is the responsibility of the building owner to see that this is followed. So it's another part of the job, like you say about recycling.
Yeah, and all New York City residents are required to recycle. That's within the charter. And I know I'm saying that, and like we also live in New York City, right? But the onus is on the residents, and it's also on the building to make sure that there's correct recycling setup areas in the building for residents to participate correctly in.
All right, just quickly, one last question before we move to the next phase here. And Donald Press, my neighbor on West 81st Street's Block Association, wants to know, how can you get the compost that's been turned into and processed if you want to use it for planting? Is that an option?
Yeah, so we're not doing givebacks right this second, but we'll certainly will be doing in the spring when it's the more normal time of the year to do compost application. nyc.gov/getcompost will be the area where you'll see all of our events and where you can pick up a bag of compost. We have a compost facility on Staten Island, and also pickups take place there during those months, early spring through summer. And also we opened up a compost pickup facility in Brooklyn, where individuals can register and pick up material for free. So nyc.gov/getcompost.
All right, thanks, Andrew. I'm sorry to rush it, but
no worries. I understand it's a short meeting we have.
Jonathan, I've got to ask you to give us a presentation, an understanding about garbage containerization, which is the sexiest part of our presentation, I understand tonight. But if you could, brevity will be great value. Take it away, Jonathan.
Great. I will do my best to be as quick as possible, and thanks again for hosting this meeting. So yes, we're going to talk about residential waste containerization and getting those bags off the street. So we'll skip this slide right away, but you could see we want to get the bags off the street. That's our main goal here. But I do want to just give you some context. It is not just residents that we are asking people to do. We've actually already mandated that all businesses across the city participate in containerization. So with the 1 to 9 units that are going to be going into effect, and all of the commercial businesses, that means we're actually getting 70% of the city's trash into containers, which is really, really impressive when you think about the amount of trash that the city puts out each and every day. So let me talk a little bit about what it's going to look like. The first is what's coming up now, and that's a rule that's already been adopted, and that is for 1 to 9 units. So properties with 1 to 9 residential units starting November 12th will be required to use bins 55 gallons or less with a secure lid. There's a picture of one right here on the screen. For buildings that have 31 or more units, they're going to eventually have on-street containers. Now, these are on-street containers that will take up street space, and they will be assigned to specific buildings. They'll have locks, and they will you'll be able to get as many as your building needs. And then there is one section that has a choice. So that's the 10 to 30 units. Properties with 10 to 30 residential units will be able to choose between on-street containers, the Empire bins as they're out now known, or wheelie bins. And we're doing this because we understand that a building that has 15 multi-family, multi-room apartments puts out a different amount of waste than, say, a building that has 30 units, but all of them are studios with 1 to 2 people in them. So we want to give those buildings an opportunity to be able to choose which is best for them. But coming up first is the 1 to 9. So here's the timeline. Like I mentioned, November 12th is that date. That's when all 1 to 9 unit properties with DSNY service. And this also does include houses of worship, agencies, and nonprofits that get DSNY service. If you have a private carder, again, like I mentioned, you're already required to use bins, but this is now for those folks that have DSNY service, and they will be required to use a lid, a bin with a lid for setting out trash. Then in June 2026, it changes. So for the next 2 years, you can use any bin, 55 gallons or less with a secure lid. By June 2026, you need to use the official NYC bin. We'll go right to that. Here it is. This is what's required for all bins. This is available at bins.nyc or by calling 1-888-855 NYC bins. And this is the one that is going to be required for all buildings, and it is significantly lower price than other similar bins that retail stores. This is what the website looks like if you go. You can see that there are trash bins. Those are the only ones that are required for 1 to 9 unit, but we do also sell recycling bins and, like Andrew mentioned, compost bins. So if you want to have them a matching set, and if you want to set that out, I do want to be very clear that the new mandate starting on November 12th is strictly for trash. The rules around recycling and composting, those are not changing, but it is specifically trash that is changing on November 12th. There are 2 different sizes. The 35 gallon holds up to 3 trash bags, and the 45 gallon holds up to 4. We went over some of this in the previous presentation, but definitely whenever you get any bin, write your address on it. It's the easiest way to make sure that you know that it is yours. Keep it clean. Use the liner. We want to make sure that these are clean both for you and for all the tenants that use them. If they're stolen, just like anything else, make sure that you report that theft to NYPD. You want to make sure that you get your property back. And extra trash from a one-time event does need to be set out in bins, but we our enforcement agents understand that holidays, there are going to be times where that may not be necessary, that may not be possible, but we do want to encourage you to get as many bins as possible to make sure that you are using what you need to containerize your waste. We get a lot of questions about storing your bins because people say that they're not sure where they could currently put them. The best advice is where your trash is currently stored. So that means if it's stored in the rear yard or within property boundaries, trash room, that's where you should put your new bins. If space is not available for bins in the place where you currently have it, then this does now allow people to store bins within 3 feet of the building line. So that essentially means up against your building. And we want to make sure that there's always a clear path for travel. And people say like, oh, how do I prevent theft? What can I do? Can I lock them up? And when they're stored outside, definitely you can lock them up, but they cannot be chained when they're set out for collection because we would not be able to service them. So for buildings with 10 or more units, we mentioned it before, but we are developing these new on-street containers that are going to actually be piloted in Manhattan Community Board 9 starting in late spring. And we have just developed a new side loading truck that's going to be able to come and pick those up to dispose of the waste. Here are the frequently asked questions, but with that, I will just stop sharing my screen and we can get right to the questions.
So
I realized I did speed through it, so let me know what you got.
no, that's okay. One of the folks who is written in is Alan Barnes at the Jefferson Towers. It's a big co-op at 95th and Columbus. He says, why isn't DSNY offering a large 55-gallon brown bins with secure lock mechanisms for sale, which would be especially useful for large residential buildings? Bins of that size and type aren't commercially available. Are you saying they are offering bins of that size or not?
No, that's not the specific brown bin, no. But if you can get, again, any 55-gallon bin that you want and write compost on it for compost. You do not have to use a specific brown bin. We wanted to make sure that there's as many options as possible.
All right, and one of our residents, Jeff Johnson, up West Side, wants to know how to handle the larger garbage bins, as his property only has room for a 25 feet container. So, can he have a smaller if there's no room? And was somebody, did I see a picture where bins were in the street, not on the sidewalk?
So there's the on-street containers, and those are for buildings that are potentially 10 units and up. But if you are using just if you're again, the bins right now are only for units that are for 1 to 9 units. If you are a larger building, you do not have to worry about anything right now. There's no changes except if you're in Manhattan Community Board 9, and we're going to be talking to you a lot. This is just for 1 to 9 units. So if you have questions about those bins, we can definitely try and answer them. But anything further on, it's not something that you need to worry about at this time.
We also have another question. When there's more trash than the container can hold, like holiday and collection day is delayed or something, are we going to see black bags acceptable on top of these containers, or what are we going to do?
We understand that there may be situations where that is necessary. The enforcement agents will use their discretion as they can, but technically it is against the rule. So there is a potential for fine, but our agents are on know that after big events, big holidays, that's not something that we're really going to be prioritizing.
Okay, in the Zoom room, Aaron, did you have a question you wanted to, or a comment you wanted to share?
It was answered already.
Okay.
Thank you.
Who else in the Zoom room had a comment or a question they wanted to raise? I will tell you that the biggest issue repeated over and over to us is that this doesn't sound like the way to get rid of the rats. That putting everything in a one lock container with all the garbage and making sure one is secured seems like a good idea. Okay. But now with the food scraps issue, that doesn't seem right. And the second thing is, in large residential buildings, having food scraps placed in garbage areas is sure to increase the rodent population inside buildings, not only outside. So there's a concern that this is a semi-disgusting approach to dealing with sanitation. So what do you two strong men think?
Well, I would just say that again, this isn't new material. This is material that is already out in trash, set out every single day across the city. So putting it into containers actually does work. We found in the pilot area where we are using more container, waste in 10 blocks of Manhattan 9 has been containerized for the past couple months. And we have found that the rat complaints in that neighborhood have gone down by 55% compared to other parts of the community district where it actually has gone up. So we're seeing that this is working, and that's why we're continuing and adapting the program, but we are continuing to make sure that we're making progress on containerizing the waste as much as possible.
Thanks, Jonathan. Melissa Elstein leads the West 80s Neighborhood Association, another one of the founding groups for our coalition. Go ahead, Melissa, please.
Thank you, Stephen. And thank you, everyone. This is really educational. I'm going to share this also with my condo board later. And yeah, we've been trying to get composting mandatory for a long time in New York City. And this is very exciting news for both the environment and the rat reduction. We definitely had some rat problems in the West 80s, as I'm sure many neighborhoods on the Upper West Side can relate. I have heard from some local buildings in my neighborhood that some days, these buildings who have been composting for a while, they were part of like a pilot plan, that sometimes the trucks seem to miss the pickup date. Some of the supers have mentioned that, and they don't know what to do. Like, have you heard those complaints before? And what happens in that situation? Because, if you only have one brown, plastic bin and the pickup gets mixed, it will be, overwhelmed for the following week. So do you have any advice about that? Thank you.
So I haven't specifically heard that for the West 80s block, but I have heard that around parts of the city that have had curbside composting or parts of the city that were in the opt-in pilot. And I think one of the challenges with opt-in before was just that it wasn't a full-on district that had service or the full city that had service. So the truck wasn't just driving down the street servicing every single address. They literally had a list of addresses that they had to kind of find. And the reality of a sanitation worker doing that is kind of, it's a challenge to what the normal aspect of the job might be. As far as addressing a missed collection, you should always report that on 311. That's my answer. I would always suggest that every 311 has to be reviewed. It's really important that we know as the agency that are doing our job correctly. I think that also now just this service being citywide once a week on the recycling day, that'll actually address that issue that had happened in the past. Yeah.
Okay. Dale Brown leads West 79th Street Block Association, the vice president of our coalition. Dale, did you have
I have a
question?
Did the Department of Sanitation send out letters to the individual buildings in Manhattan or directly to the agents to the buildings, explaining this particular situation and giving them dates? I wrote down the certain dates of the warning periods. I know that I have approached the agent for our building months and months and months ago and asked about the curbside recycling. And he said, forget it, I'm not doing it. And I said, you're going to have to do it. But I'm just wondering how they have been targeted and how have you done specific letters to buildings?
Yeah, so we sent out a mailer citywide to all tenants, to all folks. That was, again, well, we did it individually. We did Brooklyn, then Queens, then we did the 3 boroughs that just came on. So that went out to everyone. Then, like Andrew mentioned, we are doing plenty of outreach like this to individual groups, but also to property management companies. So we're doing that through groups like REBNY, the former Rent Stabilization Association, other folks that have sort of big coalitions that we can speak to, and then also directly to the property management companies themselves. We've been calling them, offering these presentations, making sure that they're aware. So we're doing as comprehensive outreach as we can. But if there is one that you feel that we have missed and you think might it would be helpful for us to call, you can send it our way, and we'll do our best to make sure that we get some contact there.
Thank you. This has really been so informative. It's a wonderful, wonderful meeting. Thank you.
So we're gonna have some follow-up questions because one of our residents I mentioned, Jeff Johnson, he says, how do we handle the larger garbage bins as our property only has room for a 25-foot container? There's no room on the street. I assume some buildings you'll have to create some adjustments to meet their conditions, right?
Yes, yeah. So for the on-street containers, it will obviously be on the street, so that means the parking will be taken for those.
Right. Okay. So he'll have to follow up with you to see. Also, the presentations you made, can you make those available to us to share so that people who
That's
want
fine.
to
Yeah, we'll
see
share
that,
them
we could-
tomorrow. Steve,
could-
I can send them to you tomorrow. Is that fine?
Yeah, that would be terrific. Last thought, last question. Anyone got a comment here? It is 7:30. We try to stick to our plan and respect people's times. So let's compost. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks
Yeah.
so much.
for joining.
Thank you so
It
much
was
for
great
setting this up.
presentations.
Okay. Have a
Thank you.
good night, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Great.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Terrific.
Thank you. See
Terrific
you next time.
presentation. Thank you.